Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Good, bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives today as usual, but we'll take them in the opposite order. Let's start with the crazy. First of all, Jim, I didn't know going into the main debate that this thing was going to last 3 hours. Kudos to you for watching both debates in full. I think you deserve some sort of award for that. This went for 3 hours, and I'm pretty sure that combined, Hugh Hewitt and Dana Bash were on air for about 35 seconds.
You know, Greg, we were so excited when we heard that Hugh Hewitt was going to be one of the moderators or questioners for this debate. It seemed like such a revolutionary idea to have a conservative radio talk show host as one of the people putting forth the questions. And, I've seen longer cameos in the Marvel movies, As like he's on screen, waves, and disappears, and it was pretty darn disappointing. We talk about the crazy martini, Greg, like just the entire format. For starters, you're right. I watched 5 hours of debating last night. That's 5 hours of my life I'm never getting back, Greg. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably into politics. You probably feel really invested in who the Republicans are going to nominate next year. Did you spend 5 hours? And if so, I'm really sorry because I cover this for a living. I'm into it. I'm a political junkie. And even I thought this kind of dragged. Really, long stretches of that second half, and that I think it makes no sense to have 4 candidates on stage for one and then 11 for the next. On that first debate, my stance as a pro-Jindal guy is pretty open. I really like the guy. I don't understand why George Pataki is here. Lindsey Graham seems like a one-issue candidate. Don't think he's getting the nominee. I don't understand what he's doing here. Santorum, yes, he won Iowa last time, but it feels like the entire country and the party and movement has kind of moved on from him. Then you're left with like this traffic jam on the main debate. And as I'm writing up my summary, oh yeah, Rand Paul was there last night. Oh yeah, somehow in this mess, Scott Walker. Remember Scott Walker? Remember this guy who was like co-front runner for a while?
Right.
Got 8 minutes out of 3 hours, Greg. The biggest problem with this debate wasn't any of the candidates. It's just the format was just fundamentally flawed. Too many candidates, too many long stretches where guys like Huckabee or Rand Paul or Scott Walker, you could just forget that they were there. I kind of think that Ben Carson went out and performed surgery during one of those breaks because he just seemed to be off stage. I know he was on stage, but it just seems like an agonizing, frustrating process here that really hemmed in what could have been good performances by some of these candidates.
Yeah, it certainly seemed to be the case, and they wanted it to be freewheeling, but the hey Jake.
It was Mel Kiper. Todd.
Let's move from crazy to bad. And for the most part, Jim, I don't think any candidate badly hurt themselves. There are probably a few different issues for specific candidates that didn't work out that great. Anytime you go into the vaccine issue, it's always dicey territory, for example. The one we're going to look at here, though, is John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, on 2 particular issues. One is the funding of Planned Parenthood, and one is what he would do with respect to the Iran deal. And here's the first one about Planned Parenthood with a question from Dana Bash.
Senator Cruz is so committed to stripping federal funds from Planned Parenthood that it could result in shutting down the federal government in just about 2 weeks. Do you agree with Senator Cruz's tactic?
Well, I agree that we should defund Planned Parenthood. I don't know many people in America that don't think that we should. And in my state, we're trying to figure out how to get it done. Because we are threatened with the federal government taking all of our Medicaid money away. I think there's a way to get this done by giving governors the ability to be able to act to defund Planned Parenthood. But when it comes to closing down the federal government, we got to be very careful about that. When we shut the government down, if we have a chance of success and it's a great principle, yes, the President of the United States is not going to sign this. And all we're going to do is shut the government down, and then we're going to open it up, and American people are going to shake their heads and say, what's the story with these Republicans?
And then he talked about the Iran deal and why he wouldn't rip it up like Ted Cruz wants to.
I think it's a bad agreement. I would never have done it. But, a lot of our problems in the world today is that we don't have the relationship with our allies. If we want to go everywhere alone, we will not have the strength as if we can rebuild our relationships with our allies.
Jim, John Kasich on those particular issues last night sounding a lot, unfortunately, like the GOP leadership. We really hate that this is happening, but we're not going to really do anything about it.
What are we supposed to do? We only have a majority in Congress. Yeah, I guess if anybody did damage last night, it was Kasich. He's playing his own game. Some people say he's going for the John Huntsman slot this time. Um, he's got a different view of what defines conservatism than a lot of the other guys in the field. Some of it manifests itself in the look, you can't shut down the government over Planned Parenthood. I think, judging by the audience reaction and some of this, it's not like Republicans want to shut down the government, but at some point you got to draw a line in the sand and say, this is what I stand for. And yeah, maybe I'm willing to take the PR hit for shutting down the government because I think it is just that important. And for a lot of people, yeah, not letting taxpayer dollars go to dismembering babies is something that, if you're not willing to fight for that, what are you willing to fight for? And then on the Iran deal, I mean, basically his gist was, well, it's a terrible deal. I wouldn't have signed it, but we got to wait for the Iranians to break it before we tear it up. Ted Cruz, another guy who kind of got lost in the traffic jam at that stage, really took him to task for it. And I think just kind of indicated it's a very odd, uncharacteristic view in a Republican debate stage to say, well, look, the Iranians are probably going to break their word, but we got to check to make sure. It's just zero familiarity with the behavior of the Iranian regime and their entire history going back 30, 40 years.
I also was disappointed that he didn't push back on the premise of the question. Dana Bash says if we don't fund Planned Parenthood, there's going to be a shutdown that's essentially the Republicans' responsibility. When the Republicans did not control the Senate and they tried to stop Obamacare funding, they were allegedly responsible for the shutdown. If Republicans pass legislation and send it to the president with funding for everything except Planned Parenthood, somehow it's their fault too. The media will still do that. Kasich's right about that, and Republicans will take a PR hit. But to not push back about who's really shutting down the government was a very big missed opportunity too.
Yeah, but I very much like that philosophy of, you prepare two bills and you send one funding bill with no funding for Planned Parenthood, send it to the president. He vetoes it. You can send that, okay, we'll fund it one. But now you've made very clear to him that he is willing to shut down the government over that. And you kind of emphasize that that's how much President Obama prioritizes dismembering babies. And I think that's a powerful message that, if you can't win on the policy, win on the messaging. And I think that's probably a better move here than just saying, what are we going to do?
All right, on to the good martini now. A lot of folks thought Carly Fiorina did very well. Some say the best last night. Her answer coupling Planned Parenthood and Iran certainly turned a lot of heads. A lot of people thought that was the most coherent answer, most clever answer. She got a lot of positive response, obviously, for her very quick, succinct response to what Trump had to say about her face several days ago in that Rolling Stone piece. Other folks had some positive moments as well. Here's a quick montage of some of the others.
As it relates to my brother, there's one thing I know for sure. He kept us safe.
If we don't seal the border, the rest of the stuff really doesn't matter. It's kind of ridiculous, all the other things that we talk about. We have the ability to do it. We don't have the will to do it.
A woman gets pregnant. She's 9 months. She walks across the border. She has the baby in the United States, and we take care of the baby for 85 years. I don't think so. And by the way, Mexico and almost every other country anywhere in the world doesn't have that. We're the only ones dumb enough, stupid enough to have it.
I've known John Roberts for 20 years. He's an amazingly talented lawyer. But yes, it was a mistake when he was appointed to the Supreme Court. He's a good enough lawyer that he knows in these Obamacare cases, he changed the statute, he changed the law in order to force that failed law on millions of Americans for a political outcome. And, we're frustrated as conservatives. We keep winning elections, and then we don't get the outcome we want.
I know that there are some in the Wall Street to Washington axis of power who speak of all of us contemptuously. But I'm here to say that I think we are, in fact, the A-team. We have some remarkable people. And in fact, not only are we the A-team, we even have our own Mr. T, who doesn't mind saying about others, you're a fool.
So, Jim, other folks had good lines as well. A lot of folks thought Rubio had a good night. Chris Christie doing pretty well on some issues as well. So, overall, like we said earlier, I don't think anybody necessarily shot themselves in the foot overly badly. And for the most part, conservative principles got a pretty healthy airing on Wednesday night.
I'm just going to observe, Greg, that succinct summary of some of the best lines actually ran an hour and a half. That's how long last night was. Also, fact check, Governor Huckabee. Mr. T said, I pity the fool, not you're a fool. All right? I mean, at that point, under moderator Garrity and Columbus, Governor, get off the stage.
That's right.
You go sit in the corner and you think about incorrect references to Stephen J. Cannell shows. All right? Your plan did not come together. You hear me? All right. So, look, for most of these candidates, they did what they do, they did well, right? I mean, if you're libertarian minded, Rand Paul made the case, and he even made isolationism, or what I would define as quasi-isolationism, sound pretty appealing. He's like, there's always going to be a Bush or a Clinton who's going to be willing to give you a war in Iraq. You want to talk about a way to like draw the contrast right there, Carly Fiorina really shined last night. I think Rubio knows his foreign policy backwards and forwards and just comes across terrifically. Everybody knows I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I think based on what we've seen in this campaign so far, I don't think anything he did last night is really going to harm him that much. I think he's kind of bulletproof in this regard. And in fact, look, when you're the front runner, you don't need phenomenal debate performances. You can just go out there and do your thing, and that's what's worked for him so far. I think Jeb was better. I don't know enough to really kind of return momentum there. I think Scott Walker, on those few isolated moments where CNN bothered to pay attention, he did a fine job. There was really nobody where you'd say, oh, tough night for them. I think, maybe if anybody, Chris Christie had kind of the most interesting. If I say fire in the belly, people are going to say I'm making a fat joke. Let's just say he came out. He was caffeinated. He ate his Wheaties. There I go again. This was a guy who really came to play, demonstrated why he's likable, why he's strong, why he's got passion, but not necessarily, I think, in a excessively bombastic way. It's a good field. I just kind of wish each one of them had gotten a better opportunity to shine, chopping them up into groups of maybe 7 and 8 candidates instead of this, 11 candidates at one time. The time limits, and obviously even with the time limits, the 3-hour debate just felt like a marathon. And you got to wonder if you had a really good moment in the second half of that debate, how many people were still watching at that point.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see the ratings from later on in that debate. You mentioned the pop culture and Mike Huckabee getting the Mr. T reference wrong. When they came back from that final commercial break, didn't you kind of feel like Rocky standing up for the 15th round, like you're just hoping to last for the last 3 minutes?
Yeah, like it's one of those things where, again, the other thing is that I know, Trump would say this is because CNN wants to sell more advertising and, 3 hours. And on the one hand, hey, you know what? These are debates. These are important. We're only doing about one of these a month for a while. So you might as well let it go long. It's not like you got to jump to Anderson Cooper in the postgame show really quickly. So on the one hand, all right, let's do this debate. On the other hand, like I said, it adds up to 5 hours of debating last night. And I just don't know if we needed, 20-some minutes to a half hour of George Pataki. But yeah, like the Pataki crowd is going to hate me for just, but I'll take on both of them. I just don't understand the format for this debate, and maybe I think CNBC has the next one. Hopefully, they'll learn from this one, the Fox debate, and with each debate, we'll get a slightly better one for giving us a chance to showcase this.
It's a long time. I hope that bathroom on board Air Force One is still operational, because that's a long time to stand there.
Indeed.
Jim, we'll keep it there. Talk to you tomorrow.
Look forward to tomorrow, Greg. See ya.
Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today, and please tune in again on Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.